העולם כולו מחכה למוצרים שלכם. אז תנו לנו במכון הייצור לסייע לכם להצליח ברמה הבינלאומית. מכון הייצור מעניק מדי שנה לאלפי יצואנים ישראלים מגוון שירותים וכלים להצלחה בינלאומית, בעזרת 3 דרכים מרכזיות. המכללה לעיצוב ושיווק בינלאומי מספקת כלים הכרחיים במגוון הכשרות, בהדרכת אנשי מקצוע מובילים במשק. שירותי מידע וייעוץ, החל מהצעד הראשון ועד לתחילת הפעילות אל מול שווקים ברחבי העולם. יצירת הזדמנויות עסקיות מותאמות לצרכים שלכם. פנו אלינו עוד היום, כדי שנוכל לסייע לכם בדרך לייצוא מצליח. מכון הייצור, מייצרים הזדמנויות עבורך.
Erev Tov, good evening for those of you who are in Israel, and good morning to our guests from the United States. My name is Defy Sternfeld. I'm the head of the College for Export and International Marketing at the Israel Export Institute. Welcome to our webinar tonight. And we're going to discuss the very interesting topic of investments. We're going to explore the ecosystem of investments in the US. And for that purpose, we have 3 giants, Bill Reichert, Gary Fowler, and Dr. Leon Eisen, who will share their knowledge and expertise with you and tell you all the secrets you need to know about investment in the USA. I would like to invite Dr. Leon Eisen to moderate the panel, and I wish you a pleasant and fruitful event. Leon,
thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Daphne, and thank you for invitation to moderate this amazing event. And we're happy to have here one of the 10 most famous and most interesting people in our world, incredible investor, partner, former partner of Guy Kawasaki, Bill Reichert, and amazing and our friend Gary Fowler from GSD Venture. We were happy to meet him in the previous webinar, and he liked this webinar. He decided to join us here as well. So today we are going to talk about investment ecosystem in United States. And I just moved the microphone to Gary Fowler just to present our guest. And so let's start from this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Leon. I really appreciate it. It's a good day. Good to see my good friend, Bill Reichert. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've been involved in a number of startups. But I'd like to introduce Bill. I've known Bill for, it seems like forever, actually. He's been on the board of companies, EVA, GST. He's just an amazing resource. I mean, he's beyond an investor. He's a all-around good guy and entrepreneur. He's with Pegasus. So for those of you who don't know, Pegasus Tech Ventures is a $1.7 billion fund, unless it's grown since we had our conversation a couple months ago. It's a global venture fund that's invested in over 140 startups worldwide in a vast area: AI, big data, health tech, robotics, etc. Bill's a MBA graduate from Stanford University, undergraduate degree in Harvard. And as many of you know, it's really important in Silicon Valley for the network and connections, because a lot of the business is done not in a formal, but a rather informal way. So it's good to have you here, Bill, and thanks for your time.
So, thank you, Gary. Delighted to be here. And thank you, Leon and Daphne, for inviting me here. Delighted to be part of this event. So what we talked about doing today, and greetings to everyone out there, either good evening, good day, good morning, wherever you may be. We talked about my sharing with you some of the lessons that I've learned here in Silicon Valley as sort of a preface to a Q&A session or ask me anything session, or whatever you want to call it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to talk about, some of the lessons that I've learned sort of over the years. Let's see which is the best version here. Is this the right one? I think I want to make sure. Yeah, okay. And so I call this session Inside the Mind of the Global Investor. My understanding is that sort of most of the people here today are most interested in understanding how it is that venture capital investors make decisions about what to invest in, and what it is that entrepreneurs need to be doing or need to do well in order to attract the attention of a global VC. And so there are lots and lots of books and blogs and panels and all that on kind of what VCs look for. But what I wanted to do was tell you some of the things that you don't always hear in these panels and in these blogs that I call the top 10 investor secrets that entrepreneurs need to know, but VCs won't tell them. And this is sort of the result of my many years, both as an entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley. I started or co-founded or restarted 4 different tech companies here, 2 of which went public and 2 of which crashed and burned. So I have a very broad span of experience on the entrepreneur side, as well as on the investing side, starting Garage Technology Ventures with Guy Kawasaki and a few others many years ago, and then investing in a couple of hundred companies before meeting the team at Pegasus Tech Ventures, which is a big global fund, and joining forces with Pegasus. So now I'm a general partner at Pegasus, which is now a $2 billion global venture capital fund. So I've seen a lot of different experiences all over the world, and have learned some things that I think it's important for entrepreneurs to know. So let me jump into the top 10 investor secrets. Turns out that contrary to popular belief, investors don't invest with their brains. This was a shock to me when I became a VC. When I was an entrepreneur, I assumed that investors were these incredible analytic brains that had an algorithm in the back of their head, could listen to this fire hose of information that they got from all of the different entrepreneurs that were pitching them, could run it through their algorithm, crank out an internal rate of return, and make these brilliant, sound, logical, data-driven investment decisions. And then I became a VC. And I watched the way that investors were investing. And I realized that, it's not like Wall Street. There's not a lot of data. And I was, I thought, based on my experience as an entrepreneur, I was taught that the way to get a VC to invest in you was to create this incredible pitch deck with 56 slides and data and graphs and tables and logic and evidence, and just beat them into submission with the brilliance of your logical argument for why you were going to be a successful investor. And then I became a VC, and I went to my new VC buddies. When we started Garage, we were funded by Sequoia and Draper Fisher Jurvetson and Mayfield and Highland, and Silicon Valley Bank funded us. So now, I got these new VC buddies. So I go to my new VC buddies and I say, okay, now that I'm one of you, tell me the secret. What's the algorithm you guys are using? And they'd look at me and they say, well, Bill, we invest in teams. Okay, fine. What are the metrics you use for investing in teams? Well, it's kind of pattern recognition. After 5 or 10 years, you'll get the hang of it. And I thought, oh my God in heaven, how could this possibly be venture capital? And so I started watching the way that VCs were making decisions and the way we were making decisions. And I had an epiphany. And the epiphany is that investors don't invest with their brains, they invest with their hearts. That the secret to connecting with a VC is not logic and data and tables and explanations. The secret is you got to get them to fall in love. You got to get them to, you got to get their hearts beating faster. You got to get their pulse racing. You got to get them to say, wow, that's amazing. You can do that. Tell me more. Wow is not an intellectual response, right? Wow is an emotional response. And if you want to separate yourself from the hordes of other entrepreneurs that are pitching, you've got to get to wow. You got to get them to fall in love. And so then the question is, what do you have that is lovable? What makes your opportunity lovable? And so by lovable, I mean, amazing, something that will connect with the VC and say, this is a deal I want to do. Sometimes it's team, sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's traction, sometimes, it's vision. There's all sorts of things that cause VCs to fall in love. We could talk about this more in the Q&A session. So that's the number one secret. Investors don't invest with their brains, they invest with their hearts. Secret number two, contrary to popular belief, VCs are not impressed by your vision and passion. And so, you get VCs on stage saying, we want to see the passionate entrepreneurs that want to change the world. I'll tell you, that's table stakes. That's table stakes. Of course, you have to have vision and passion. Of course, you've got to be doing something that's going to make a material difference out there. So yes, we want to see vision and passion, but what we really, really care about is we want to see that you can execute and sell. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how visionary you are, how passionate you are, you got to be able to convince customers and partners and prospective employees and vendors and whatever. You got to be able to convince them to pay for your product, join your company, partner with you, whatever it is. You've got to be able to execute and sell. And I will tell you, certainly here in the United States, and I think around the world, our educational systems, our training systems, our entrepreneurship programs, they underemphasize the word sell. It's astonishing to me. Even guys like, Steve Blank, I love Steve Blank, great guy, wonderful guy, but, he won't use the word sell. He talks about customer discovery and business development and customer development and stuff like that. I mean, fine, good. I mean, as a culture, we don't particularly like salespeople, but that's crazy, right? But you, as an entrepreneur, you got to show that you can sell. Otherwise, you don't have a company, right? So that's secret number two. Secret number three, you shouldn't underpromise and overdeliver. A lot of entrepreneurs get the coaching. You got to be careful you don't overpromise and underdeliver. And that's right. Most entrepreneurs overpromise and underdeliver. And that's a problem because, even in the few weeks that we're sort of doing diligence on you, we discover that some of the promises you're making, oh yeah, we're going to get this deal done next week, fall short. And that's just does not do you well if you overpromise and then underdeliver just during our due diligence period. And so coaches, advisors tell entrepreneur, slow down a little bit, underpromise and then overdeliver. Well, unfortunately, the hard, gruesome truth of the entrepreneurship world is your reality is you have to overpromise and overdeliver. It's not going to help you to underpromise if, we're listening to other companies that are promising something bigger, greater, faster. So you got to overpromise and then back to execute and sell. You got to overdeliver. Secret number four, VCs are not looking for big markets. I mean, this is a craziness that has infected the pitch coaching world, which is that, you know, VCs are these greedy bastards and all they care about is unicorns, right? And so if you're going to be a unicorn, you got to have a big market, right? Kind of makes sense. So what happens? Entrepreneurs, they go out and they, you know, they're in the auto parts distribution business. And so they go out and they Google auto parts distribution. And they discover, amazingly, excitingly, the auto parts distribution business is a $56 billion business in the United States alone. So they put into their pitch that their target market is a $56 billion market. And boy, you know, all I have to do is get 2% of that market and I'm a $1 billion company. Isn't that amazing, right? We get that all the time. So I'm sure all of you have seen this slide. It's in every pitch deck template, which is TAM, SAM, SOM. TAM, you know, total available market, you know, $56 billion. SAM, serviceable addressable market. Well, some subset of the market that represents your, you know, category within that market. And then SOM, serviceable obtainable market, which is, you know, basically your financial projections. How many customers are you going to get? Those slides are almost always, you know, bullshitaki mushrooms. I mean, it's just, you know, they're always delusional and they destroy your credibility as an entrepreneur. When you say, you know, the one I love, I mean, we're going to transform the $3.7 trillion healthcare market, you know, baloney. You're not going to transform the $3.7 trillion healthcare market. So stop using these delusional numbers as your sort of market. It doesn't really matter how big your market is. I have never seen a company fail because its market was too small. Right? I mean, that may seem shocking, but I've never seen a company fail because the market is too small. It's hard to imagine a market that is too small. Why do companies fail? It's not because their market's too small. It's because they can't get enough customers. There's almost always enough customers. The problem is, converting them to paying customers. So it's not that we're looking for a big market. We're looking for companies that can grow fast and become big because they know exactly who their target customers are. They know how to get to them, how to convince them, how to convert them, how to upsell them, how to sustain them, how to retain them. That's how you build a big company fast, is you know exactly who your target customers and you're really good at getting to them and converting them. But the fact that your market is big, you know, quote unquote, is not a determinant of your likelihood of success. It's your ability to sell. Again, it's your ability to acquire and convert customers. So stop arguing that you know, because your market is big, if you only get a tiny percent of it, you'll be a big company. Never say that out loud in front of a VC, please, please. Okay. So secret number 5. This is a controversial one. VCs don't invest in entrepreneurs who are smart. Now, wait a second, Bill, that you're crazy. That can't be true. You know, isn't Jeff Bezos smart? You know, even isn't Elon Musk smart? Well, there's another question for you. But the point I'm trying to make here is it's not really about smart. It's about investing in entrepreneurs who are savvy. And I don't know, you know, I'm hoping that the words translate well or convey well. What's the difference between smart and savvy? So, you know, smart people are the ones that did well in school. They got good grades. They went to a good university. They got good scores, blah, 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 blah. Everybody says, oh, you know, she's smart or he's smart or whatever. The problem is people who have been identified and self-identify as smart tend to be know-it-alls, tend to feel as though whenever anybody asks them a question, they have to have the answer. That's really dangerous in entrepreneurship because almost certainly you don't have all the answers. So a savvy entrepreneur is the person who, confronted with a question, confronted with a challenge, confronted with a problem, the savvy entrepreneur says, well, I think maybe this is the answer, but I'll tell you what, I'm not really sure what the right answer is, but I know how to go figure it out. I know kind of who to talk to, where to go, what to test, what to try, what to experiment with. So savvy is about admitting you don't know all the right answers. It's about being savvy about figuring it out when there is uncertainty. And so smart entrepreneurs think they have the right answer and they say, I know the answer, go do this. They may be right, but frequently they're not right. Savvy entrepreneurs make sure that they have evidence and proof that the pathway they're going down is right before they jump in and follow that path. Okay? So, secret number 6, back to people, right? Secret number 6, high-performing teams don't execute in harmony. This was something that I was a little bit surprised about when I was an entrepreneur, because I thought, when you're an entrepreneur, you get to, join forces with all your buddies and you share a vision and you lock arms and march forward together into the future. And you play ping pong or foosball, and you give back rubs and you drink beer and, sing kumbaya, right? That's what I thought entrepreneurship was all about. And then when I became an entrepreneur, every once, we'd be in the conference room, we're trying to figure something out. And all of a sudden, people would start yelling at each other across the table. And I thought, no, wait, stop. This can't be good. Arguing, this must be something dysfunctional, because don't we all share the same vision? Aren't we all aligned and all that good stuff? But it turns out what I learned slower than I should have is the secret to getting the most out of your team is figuring out how to tap constructive conflict. So high-performing teams are fueled by constructive conflict. Now, I got to tell you, I'm guessing that Israelis are pretty good at this. I'm not sure. I think Leanne, Gary, you can correct me on this. But an Israeli friend of mine said that the Israeli army is the only army in the world where enlisted soldiers are allowed to question commanding officers. I heard something to that effect. Whether this is true or apocryphal, the point is a brilliant point, which is that if you've got a lot of very talented people in your organization, almost certainly they're going to have different perspectives on things. They have different backgrounds, different experiences, different skills, expertise. You are confronted with a problem. Everybody's going to bring their own perspective to the table. You get different perspectives at the table. You get highly talented people at the table. And what's going to happen? Inevitably, they're going to argue, right? People are going to argue. If there's no difference of opinion, then, maybe the answer is is absolutely obvious. But for most problems, most significant problems that entrepreneurs face, there's no single obvious right answer. And so hopefully you've got enough diversity of opinion and experience on your team that you're going to get these different perspectives. Now, I have seen entrepreneurs whose attitude is, everybody else, you shut up. I'll tell you what to do. Just go do what I tell you to do. I don't want to hear anything from you guys. That's a terrible approach, right? First of all, who wants to work for that guy, right? I mean, do you really want to work for that guy? And second of all, is it likely that you're always going to have the best answer if you take that approach? No. You want to have a talented team with a lot of experience and expertise, and you want them to argue. You want them to sort of flesh out sort of the important sort of critical assumptions and critical data and sort of fight for what they think is the right answer. Now, the challenge is as a culture, creating a culture where you argue constructively. In other words, you don't argue by saying somebody else is an idiot. I know that's sometimes hard to do, but you've got to be careful that you argue constructively, and then you've got to have a mechanism for coming to a decision. Maybe the decision is, oh, there's two alternatives here, let's test them before we make a decision. That's a legitimate decision. Or you say, hey, the balance of evidence suggests this is the best path to go down. The risk of being wrong is not that great. Let's go down that path, and hopefully that'll prove itself out. The trick in your culture is to make sure that the people who disagreed with that do not sabotage that deal. You've got to create a culture that says, okay, we'll listen to everyone, we'll consider every perspective, but when we make a decision, everybody has got to lock in on that and support that decision. If you sabotage it, you're off the bus. So it's a concept that some people have referred to as disagree, then commit. So it's okay to have a different point of view, but once we come to a decision, you've got to commit to that decision. So that's what we call constructive conflict. You get the best ideas out of the table, you figure out a mechanism for identifying the best path forward, and then you commit as a team to moving forward that way. So again, contrary to popular belief, high-performing teams don't execute in harmony. And what I learned, sort of growing up here in Silicon Valley, I didn't really grow up here, but is some of the best teams have a lot of fierce arguments. Intel was famous for this. Apple was famous for this. One of my companies, we got Microsoft as an investor. It was stunning. We'd go up to Washington, up to Microsoft in Washington. We'd be in a conference room with a bunch of Microsoft guys, and they would be yelling at each other in front of us. We thought, wow, that's crazy. But, so you can criticize whether or not Microsoft was the most brilliant company or not right now. It's one of the most valuable companies in the world still. So, high-performing teams are fueled by constructive conflict. So secret number 7. So this is highly relevant to all of you who are thinking of sort of either coming to the United States or trying to get investors for your company in Israel. But even global VCs don't invest globally. Now that seems like a contradiction because you hear all of these global brand name VCs, they're investing globally, right? Well, no. The reality is that they actually invest locally. Sequoia invests in Israel out of a team in Israel. They invest in India out of a team in India, et cetera, right? So most of us, global VCs, we have offices around the world. So what we're looking for global entrepreneurs. We're looking for, globally successful companies, but part of our filter process is making sure we understand the local success story of that company. And so it's one of the problems, it's one of the challenges of venture capital. Because startup companies are so fragile, it's you really need to be close to them at some level. And that, sometimes we do it through partners and co-investors, but the reality is we invest locally. So if you want to come to the United States to, expand and raise venture capital, you've got to understand that VCs also don't invest in visitors. So what do I mean by that? So I tell you, it astonishes me how often I'll get an entrepreneur team that, is visiting. It's interesting. COVID kind of changed this and Zoom kind of changed this, but we're getting back to face-to-face. And so I'm meeting an entrepreneur face-to-face, and we exchange, another habit that has almost died, but we exchange contact information, we exchange business cards. I get a business card that, has a, the home address is in this case, the home address is in Seoul, Korea. Or in Herzliya, right? If you hand me a business card that says that you're in Herzliya, as far as I'm concerned, you're a visitor. And, fine, maybe through one of our partners in Israel, we might be able to connect and follow up. But if you really want to raise money in the US, when you get off the plane, what's the first call you should make? What's the first call you should make when you get off the plane? It's not to a VC. The first call you should make is to a customer. So what we want to see is that you have the ability to convert customers in the US. God bless, you already have customers in the US. That's very helpful. Show us that you are committed to the US market, or, in our case, depending upon where you're going, if you're committed to the Europe market, talk to our partner in Germany, or you're committed to the Japanese market, talk to our office in Tokyo, right? So we don't invest in visitors. We invest in teams that are committed to our, relatively local market, the US being a pretty big local market, but it's really hard to be confident investing in a company that is based, whose operating team is based in another country, hoping that they can hire somebody to penetrate the other market. So again, I don't need to spend a lot of time on this one because Israeli entrepreneurs are better than almost any other, teams on the planet in terms of being able to straddle multiple continents and, operate both in Israel and in the United States. Secret number 8 has to do with the way you talk about your business and the way you operate your company. It's a lesson I learned many years ago as an entrepreneur from my VP of sales. So my VP of sales was this crusty old guy out of Boston who was teaching me sales. And, I'm a, whatever I was at the time, I was a, 20-something guy. And I refer to this guy as a crusty old guy. He was probably 45, right? So I've learned, at this point, that's not a very crusty old guy to me. But in any case, Dave, one day he tells me, Bill, you don't get it. Customers don't buy products. I go, Dave, what are you kidding? I mean, that's all we got. All we got is products. What are we going to do? What do you mean? Customers don't buy products. They buy benefits. So, the point is that what customers are looking for is the benefit that the product delivers. They don't care about, your elegance, cleverness, technology, whatever it is, colors. Stop describing your product. Stop defining yourself in terms of your products. Define yourself in terms of the benefits you deliver, their value proposition. So I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but it comes across very clearly with a lot of entrepreneurs that they are in love with their product. They just think their product is so cool, so wonderful, so elegant. They think their tech stack is so clever. But customers don't buy products, they buy benefits. Stop talking about your product and talk about the benefits you deliver to your customers. Secret number 8 is, so, The reality is VCs don't understand your pitch. So, entrepreneurs think, oh, VCs, they're really smart, right? And so I got to show that I'm as smart as they are. And so I'm going to frame my pitch at, a high level of sort of intellectual rigor. And believe it or not, the result of that is we don't know what you're talking about, because none of us are as expert in your specific domain, much less your specific technology, as you are. And so you're going to have a tendency to assume that we understand what you're talking about. So entrepreneurs tend to overestimate the domain expertise of investors. You try to talk, if you're a software company, SaaS software, whatever, you try to talk to the partner, to the VC, who is, an experienced former entrepreneur, now investor in SaaS, software. But I'll tell you, technology changes so fast that, we VCs get out of date very quickly. When Guy and I started Garage, one of the things, we were talking about our backgrounds in software and in technology and computer science. And we thought, well, maybe we should focus on our areas of expertise. And, we looked at each other and we said, we're already out of date. We are already out of date. So screw that. We're never going to pretend to be the smartest guys in the room on any given technology or market sector. So what we went the total opposite direction. We went totally industry and technology agnostic. And so we were investing in life sciences, we were investing in material sciences. We were one of the very first investors in nanotech. It turned out brilliantly because we were so early. But so the point is though, that VCs are already out of date. They may sit in on board meetings, they may try to keep up, but they're already out of date. And they're specifically not going to understand your 3-letter acronyms. And so I can't tell you, I can go through 6, 8, 10, 12 pitches in a day. And I'm bouncing between material science and quantum computing and artificial intelligence and, life science. And I'm getting all these 3-letter acronyms, from pitch to pitch to pitch. Yeah, if I were focused, I could kind of remember all the 3-letter acronyms in a specific domain, but I'm never going to be able to bounce from an AI pitch to a life science pitch and, remember all the 3-letter acronyms, right? So be careful about overestimating and thinking that you're complimenting the VC by pitching at a very high technical level. Make sure you pitch at a level that the vast majority of VCs are going to be able to understand. Okay. The other thing is that entrepreneurs always overestimate the clarity of their pitches. You see these slides, and when I'm coaching our portfolio companies on their follow-on investments, and I look at this slide that is totally unintelligible, and I say, Malcolm, what do you expect people to take from this slide? And the entrepreneur's response generally is, well, it's obvious, isn't it? Right? Or if they don't understand the slide, then they're not qualified investors. That's a terrible way to think about the way to communicate. Make sure that your communications are clear to the investors, which leads us to secret number 10, which is VCs don't invest in why. I don't know how many of you have heard Simon Sinek talk about the power of why. He did not invent this concept, but he popularized it and has made a lot of money off of it. His whole point is that sort of the organizing principle of successful companies is the why of the company. It's it's the vision, it's the mission, and that's important. Yeah, good for him. But that's not what we invest in. We don't invest in your why. Now, you may say, well, wait a second, Bill. Sometimes, one of the most common questions you'll get from VCs is, Why you and why now? That's not what I mean by why. When people talk about the power of why, it's the vision rationale of the company, mission of the company. Why you, why now is a filter for, what do you bring to the table that is better, more valuable? What's the nature of the market such that now is the right time to sort of try to penetrate it? But to the high level vision mission, we don't invest in why, we invest in wow. We invest in wow. And that goes back to my original point, which is that VCs don't invest with their brains, they invest with their hearts. Now, I will tell you, you got to connect with the brain. Yes, you do. You have to connect with the brain. What you say has got to make sense. We've got to understand it. That's secret number 9. You got to make sure you're presenting what you're saying, what your company is, clearly in a way that we can understand it. So we can't get excited if we don't understand what you're saying. But the wow is the compelling value proposition you deliver that is 10 times better what the competition can bring. You're 10 times faster or 10 times, more efficient or productive or higher throughput or 1/10 the cost or, you last, whatever it is, right? That's your wow. What is your wow? And that's, what I spent a chunk of my recent past on, is focusing on how to help entrepreneurs get to wow. And the secret to getting to wow is 3 things. You got to be clear about what you do. It's stunning to me. It's amazing to me how few entrepreneurs can, in one sentence, give a clear description of what it is they're doing. It's amazing how often when I'm on a judging panel for, pitch days, demo days, whatever, it's amazing how often, the judges turn to each other and say, do you know what these guys are doing? Do you get it? I don't get what these guys are doing, right? How can you be pitching and not be clear about what it is you do? And then, in order to get us to fall in love, you've got to be compelling. What is your 10x value proposition? So you've got to be compelling. That's what gets my heart beating faster, right? And then last, you got to be credible. And this is my point about not destroying your credibility with statements that seem delusional about, your market size or your, projected revenue growth or your, the appropriate valuation of your company. What evidence do you have that is going to lead me to believe what you're saying? So in order to get to wow, you've got to be clear, you got to be compelling, and you got to be credible. And I encourage entrepreneurs to figure out how to do all 3 so that you can get to wow in just a 20-second or 30-second conversation. The other thing that entrepreneurs don't appreciate is that most of the pitches they're going to make in their careers are less than 30 seconds long. How can that be, Bill? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, even elevator pitches are 60 seconds, if not 2 minutes. What do you mean less than 30 seconds? Well, remember, every time you open your mouth, you're pitching. So, right? Every time you meet someone, every time you introduce yourself on Zoom, every time you're at a trade show and you bump into someone or somebody asks you what you do, you're pitching, right? So how do you leave them with something that is memorable? It's memorable if it's clear, if it's compelling, if it's credible. And so I encourage entrepreneurs, apply this filter to every single communication of your company, on your website, your press releases, your pitches, your sales materials. Are you clear? Are you compelling? And are you credible? So those are the top 10 VC secrets. VCs invest with their hearts, not with their heads. You need to prove your ability to execute and sell. You have to overpromise and overdeliver. We want good markets that you can penetrate and grow fast in, not big markets. You need to be savvy, not just smart. High-performing teams tap diverse perspectives and tap into creative conflict. You need to demonstrate that you can be successful in the local market in order to get venture capital. You got to focus on creating value, not just cool products. Customers buy benefits, not products. You got to make sure your pitch is crystal clear, and you need to understand how to get to wow, what's going to make us fall in love. So with that, this is the advertising portion of the program. If you want to learn more about how to get to wow, it's a book that I co-authored with Angelica Blendstrup that is available at an Amazon.com near you. With that, thank you all so much. I'd love to have entertain questions, have a conversation about venture capital, global investing, international entrepreneurship, whatever. Okay. So I haven't had a chance to be watching. Do we have, Leon, Gary, do we have any questions?
We're here, Bill.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
here.
All right.
So if you
How's
can
our
share-
time?
sharing the screen.
You want me to unshare?
Yeah,
Okay, here we are. Yes.
Yeah,
it
so we're
looks
back.
like you move us into interior, into your brain, and share your wisdom with us. I was feeling I'm somewhere in a different world, and
Yes.
it's amazing, and it's like some completed wisdom of how to build the company and how to overcome the problems. It's amazing. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you.
and Bill,
Right.
we have our first question here from Hila Shaviv. It says, how do you get wow for men for a woman's product, right? Something that's oriented. So that was her question.
Yeah. No, that's a good one and an interesting challenge, which is that as we all know, and as we keep getting pounded on, and we're working on this, but most VCs are men. Overwhelmingly, VCs are men. And so there are definitely categories that we just, we don't have any sort of connection with. Generally, when it's a feminine product or a product for women, we're less likely to be able to sort of appreciate it at a sort of deep level compared to the way a woman might. So, I'm not, there are all sorts of examples of this. One of the companies that was in a program that I was part of, it turns out, so Pegasus and I have partnered with the Harvard alumni entrepreneurs to create the Harvard Alumni Entrepreneur Accelerator Program powered by Pegasus Tech Ventures. And it was very interesting. One of the companies that was part of the program is a company called Thermoband, which is a technology that now we have seen out in the marketplace, designed to help women who are going through menopause and hot flashes. And it turns out, right, women have a very different experience than men, although sometimes, amazingly, I learned that there is such a thing as hot flashes in men. But there is some interesting technologies to mitigate those hot flashes that this company was pitching. And so again, how do male VCs understand that? Well, it is true for most technology sectors that the VCs do not have a visceral appreciation of that technology or that sector. So it's not unique to feminine products or products designed for women. It's always the case that a good investor understands when they are not the customer. And it's important, good VCs do not count on their own instincts as the basis on which they're assessing somebody else's value proposition. So if you have a product that is designed, and this is, a particularly, clear example, you're pitching to male VCs a product that's designed for women, then what you bring to the table are testimonials of women that validate the compelling value proposition. So the compelling value proposition for any company is unlikely to be obvious and visceral to a VC. So, another example from the Harvard Accelerator, a company that was developing enterprise software for blood banks in West Africa. Okay, most VCs have zero understanding or appreciation, for blood bank technology requirements, much less, the situation in West Africa. And so again, as an entrepreneur, you've got to make sure that you bridge this gap between your customers and the investors by offering evidence, testimonials, other sorts of proof that your solution has a compelling benefit for your target customers. And that's the way, you bridge the gap. If you're very early on, right? If you're very, very early on, you don't have revenues yet, it's obviously harder. Obviously, the best way to deliver that evidence is if you have traction. So if you have traction and you have hockey stick growth, boom, that does it. So we invested in a company, example here. We invested in a company in Southeast Asia called Base, and Base is a company started by two women that is developing personalized cosmetics for women in Southeast Asia. So, a lot of the global brands don't take into consideration the different skin types and the different skin colorations in Southeast Asia, right? And so this team said, boom, we can deliver a value proposition to women in Southeast Asia that, Revlon and those guys don't get yet, right? I can't particularly fully appreciate, skin type, color, and other issues related to cosmetics, but boy, when you saw their traction, it was unbelievable how fast they were growing and how efficiently they were acquiring customers. And so, I didn't need to know much about cosmetics to say, wow, this is an amazing company. So give us evidence, give us proof that, what you're saying is valid.
I would add a couple of words. Exactly what I'm thinking also. And I think there is no any investor who is customer of, or 99% of investors are not customers of the startups. So I think a startup should be some kind of like financial vehicles. So investor consider startup like a financial vehicles, because I cannot understand what happens. I cannot understand exactly what the business. And just if you can show me that my investment will grow, I think this is the case. Not technology, not something else.
Okay, listen, we have another question. We have a couple more, so we'll have to move on, but how to get your pitch check actually read by VC as sending to the general mailbox doesn't really work. So what's the best way to get to a VC, Bill?
Yeah, and again, you'll hear this, all around the planet. The secret is, what a warm introduction, right? I mean, it's you've got to get someone that I know to say, hey, Bill, I know a company that is doing this and this, and here's their wow, and this is why I think it fits with what you're doing. Can I send you their deck? And so, I would say that, 50% of the time, depending on how well I know the person, I'll say sure, and I'll look at the deck, and I'll pay attention. If something comes in over the transom unsolicited, or it comes in, from some finder that I don't know who happened to find my email address, right? There's a very low chance that I'm going to open it and read it. But your best bet, whether you have an introduction, whether it's warm or cold or however, your best bet is at the top of that email, you've got to be able to articulate your wow. And that wow has got to resonate with my fund, in some way. So, that's cold. There are cold emails that work. If you show you've done your homework, you show what I am and do and invest in, you show what Pegasus is and does and invests in, and you have a compelling wow, there's a really good chance that we're going to open that, read that, and respond to you.
No, that's great. I mean, another technique that I've used is I do a FedEx, because nobody hardly does it anymore. And it goes right to the person and they look at it. The chance of them looking at it's really high.
I
think differently.
I would disagree with you there, Gary, but no, the last thing I need is paper, right? But that's okay.
Right. And we got, so we have another one, Pure Sight. They're doing child safety solutions, and they support more than 500,000 families. They're opening up an office in Pure Sight, USA. But their question is, since they're operating in Israel, what kind of steps should they take before they have a meeting with the VCs in Silicon Valley, I assume? What are the steps they should take?
Well, I mean, again, there's a spectrum, and there's always counterexamples, but ideally, I would say, if you validated your business in Israel and you're coming to the US, what's going to facilitate getting venture capital in the US is, one, you have some validation that you can compete in the US. So one of the challenges is that there's a graveyard of companies that have tried to develop child safety solutions here in the US. Lots and lots of entrepreneurs have tried. I'm not sure if anyone has actually succeeded. Probably there is someone who's successful, I'm not sure. But you've got to be able to show the US market, and you can validate that you can be successful in the US market. That's ideal, right? And then the second thing that is related is we would much prefer that you are incorporated in Delaware than you are incorporated in Israel. So that's another issue that I'm sure you've already heard of for all of you who are thinking about, bridging to the US, is the question of whether or not you are going to flip to Delaware. I know a lot of Israeli companies, they initially incorporate in Delaware, just to simplify that whole process. And there are a lot of Israeli companies whose attitude is, hey, we're Israel. We've been proven we can be successful as Israeli companies. And they don't incorporate in Delaware. It makes it somewhat harder for you to get US venture capital if you're not incorporated in the US. But that would be another thing that I would want to see for a company that is looking to expand into the US market, right? So prove that you can compete in the US market, and ideally register and, have the leadership team here in the US.
Yeah, and so you said very important, you said very important thing, that first call you have to make to customer. I think this is the answer to this question.
Mm-hmm. Bill, we talked about it yesterday, but in terms of the market, some people are saying that the market is down and they're not getting funded. But what's the feeling in Silicon Valley right now? And because we're hearing the opposite, right? There's a lot of money out there, just it's moving in different directions. What's the current state?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, the current state is, sort of shifted but still a spectrum of points of view. The central tendency has shifted from it's a seller's market and we have to pay up to get into the best deals. In other words, that, there was a time when it seemed as though equity was infinite and good companies could raise money at outrageous prices, and raise an infinite amount of money and burn an infinite amount of money. So that whole thing has shifted. There are still companies that are raising a lot of money and burning a lot of money, but absolutely the central tendency is we need a much more visible pathway to cash flow positive. We want a little bit more, we want greater capital efficiency. There's much more attention to financing risk. If we're investing in this round, it used to be that we could be highly confident the company could raise the money in the next round. Now we're not so confident, right? So we're much more sensitive to financing risk. So, overall, Silicon Valley has definitely shifted toward a little more cautious, a little more conservative. And then, there's a significant thing going on in the overall funding world. You made the comment, Gary, that there's a lot of money that is, available out there. Yes, there's a lot of cash out there sloshing around the world, right? And sloshing around Silicon Valley. There's a lot of cash remaining. But one of the things that is happening at the institutional level is, because of all the flux in the markets, a lot of the pension funds, endowments, family offices are looking at their allocations and saying, oops, our allocations are out of whack. We have too much allocation to venture capital and private equity because the public markets have gone down. And so what you're hearing is the institutional investors saying to their GPs, do not come to us asking for more money, because we're not we're not likely to give you more money, certainly not now. So the GPs being the venture capital funds, the venture capitalists are saying, oops, we've got to slow down our pace of investment. We've got to make this current fund last longer. And so even funds with lots of money are getting more cautious about allocations. Excuse me, sorry. And so even though, there is a lot of money sloshing around, you're going to see sort of increased conservatism in the allocation of that money. And then there's always the guys who, like to get into the press by saying, the sky is falling, we're going to have all these bad things happen and it's going to be a bloodbath and RIP and whatever. So you're going to always hear that. And, people are going to report that XYZ general partner said the sky is falling. And so you're going to read that. The sky's not falling. We're as busy as ever. We're doing deals at roughly the same pace as we've always done them. We're getting, the nice thing is that terms are better. We're seeing better terms now. And then also because of the Pegasus model, we're not sensitive to the institutional investors the way most VCs are. Because all of our investors are corporate strategic investors that are looking to plug into the innovation ecosystem as part of their innovation strategy and their growth strategy. And so as much as ever, more so than ever, multinational corporations have a hair on fire panic that they're going to be disrupted out of business if they don't figure out an innovation strategy and a growth strategy. So we've got our corporate partners that are saying, keep finding new, innovations and technologies that we can tap into for our own purposes. So, we're seeing, at least in the corporate strategic investing side of things, unlike prior cycles, right? Unlike prior cycles where corporations also shut down, we're not seeing any hesitancy on the corporate side for continuing to invest in innovation because they have no choice. They really, I mean, for them, it's live or die.
Yeah,
So-
innovate or die. So got it. I think
Right.
we're at the top of the hour.
Sorry,
for
guys.
No, it's fine now. So do we have time for another question, Leon, or not?
Yeah, I think because there is a very interesting question. Daphne, do we have time for very
Yeah,
interesting questions?
last question, because we're over time.
Last question, very nice.
Last-
So,
Okay, so
Okay, all right.
what is your definition of PMF for B2B and B2C companies? And how many users justify PMF in B2B and B2C scenario?
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Let's unpack that one. I'm sorry. Is that okay? So first of all, I just hate entrepreneurs who say PMF. I mean, it's just, it's another TLA that drives me nuts, but that's okay. So what is your definition of product market fit for B2B? Was that the first one? What's the first one?
Yeah, B2B. So the first one is B2B. What is your definition of PMF for B2B and B2C? And how
Okay.
many users justify product market fit in B2B and B2C scenarios?
And how many what? Well, I'm sorry, how many what?
How many users do you need to have to be able to
yeah.
justify?
Okay. So it's I don't know that Steve and Eric came up, Steve Blank, Eric Rees came up, or and the rest of the gang came up with a very definitive definition of the determinant of product market fit. My own definition is that you can see that your customer acquisition cost is visibly getting reduced, right? So generally when a company launches, they're crazy scrappy and they have really low customer acquisition cost. I shouldn't say I should say CAC, right? Because we're using TLAs. So I'll say CAC. So when a company launches, the CAC is almost always crazy low because the company's scrappy and, there's a little bit of organic and all that sort of stuff. I love it, and we spend $0 on marketing. And I'm saying, what the frick have you been doing if you're not doing marketing? How, are you an entrepreneur or not? I hate it when entrepreneurs say we spend $0 on marketing. But having said that, so generally your CAC is low, and then when you raise money and you start actually doing marketing and measuring CAC authentically, it goes up, right? So your CAC goes up. And so now you're trying to figure out what's the most efficient way to acquire customers. So CAC is as good a measure of efficiency as you're going to find, because it should include both sort of dollars and, by definition, time. If it takes a long time to convert an enterprise customer into a paying customer, that time gap is going to be, your sales expenditures are going to be accumulating. And so your CAC is going to be higher if your sales cycle is higher, by definition, certainly for B2B. For B2C, it's a little bit, it's a little bit different. But what you want to see is both your CAC going down and the pace of customer acquisition going up. So if your CAC is going down and your pace of customer acquisition is going up, that has got to be a clear definition of product market fit. So unfortunately, some entrepreneurs want to say, well, if I've got, 10 enterprise customers, I must have product market fit. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's not necessarily the case. What I want to see are some metrics that show your momentum, not just your state. Right? So product market fit is all about trajectory, not about, state, not about a milestone. And so the trajectory of your CAC the trajectory of your sales cycle and your customer growth are the metrics we're going to look at to determine whether you have product market fit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Amazing.
Okay. So maybe, maybe the three of us should get together and write a blog on that one. That's a really
Yeah,
good.
no, sounds good. Sounds good,
Yeah.
Bill. Thanks for
Okay.
taking time out of your busy schedule. Really appreciate you coming in today, and I'm sure all the startups out there really enjoyed it. And thank you, Daphne and my buddy Leon. It's really great one more time to be able to participate and be able to help in this incredible ecosystem they've developed. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
And
And
we
I-
invite you, Bill and Gary, visit Israel and meet with our entrepreneurs. I think it will enrich all of us.
I got to get there. Thank you, Leon.
We'd love to have you here.
And I did promise Daphne that I would send her the slides. So again, for anybody out there who wants a copy of the slides, I think if you can contact Daphne, then she'll get you a copy of the slides.
Well, they don't
okay?
need to contact me. We will send the recording and the presentation, and also a link to a feedback form, which we would ask you to fill in, so we would know, we'll be able to know which other topics are of interest to you. In ways of presenting your deck, your proposition for a VC, I can recommend you to a workshop that we're going to have at the end of December about storytelling. And at the beginning of the year, we're going to have a workshop about turning cold leads to warm friendships. So these are essential tools that you might need when you're going to approach anyone, especially VCs. So thank you, Bill, Gary, and Leon, for your time and your wise words. And thank you, the people at home in the office, for listening to us. And see you on our next events. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you, Daphne.
Stay strong.
Thank you, Bill.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gary.